Hey there, how's it going? What's up? Welcome in. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now, and we're live right here on Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. And on this Thanksgiving Eve, on this Wednesday, November 27th, 2024, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, I greatly appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. A lot to get to on the Eagles front as we go into this Sunday tilt against the Baltimore Ravens and what could be a Super Bowl 59 preview. Would not surprise me at all if Philadelphia and Baltimore are representing the NFC and the AFC in New Orleans come February. We're going to preview that game coming up. Could Howie Roseman make a move at the defensive end spot following the Brandon Graham injury? Even though yesterday Philadelphia brought in two defensive ends, lot to get to and discuss here on the show. And producer Chip here to my right on the ones and twos, steadying the ship, making the show go. The recent commenter club, shout out to Daniel Zimmerman, Carol Hosey, Sabrina White, Vedanth, Dennis Designs, Losing Hope, all in the chat. We're going live a little bit earlier today because producer Chip has to hop on a flight to go see the family members, and we will be live once again on Sunday for Eagles Ravens. It is the day before Thanksgiving. We're coming to you live from Studio H in the Chat Sports Studios. But where are you? Let me know down in the comment section right now. We'll start to give you some shout outs. My guy Dragon, always rocking and rolling with us from Serbia. It's always amazing to me how people will watch this show regardless of where they are. That's why Eagles Now is the worldwide leader for Eagles Talk right here on YouTube. Dennis Designs, by the way, your Eagles Now jersey was mailed to the studio yesterday, so I have that jersey. I will get that sent to Florida ASAP. Could be a little bit of a delay with shipping just because it's the holiday season, but it did get sent to us, and now I will send it to you, the number 24 with Eagles Now on the nameplate. It's coming your way, my guy, and I can't wait until you can rock it. Professor D is in Utah. Jeffrey Blackwell is in Reidsville, North Carolina. Ketrick, Washington, Louisiana. Carol Hosey, Georgia. Love you, Chase. We love you too, Carol. Gene Holcomb watching from Alabama. And Crucial Art Concepts is saying something, and he's explaining how everybody is feeling. Go freaking birds. Exactly. Now, we have 4 segments coming your way on the show here today. That includes a mailbag. That will be segment number 4. So if you have a question about the Eagles, you have a hot take, you have some analysis that you want to pass along, hop on board, join the show, use the hashtag Eagles, or send in a super chat. If we get to $100 in total super chats, I will take down a drink. Philly Don is in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. I love Shenandoah. Spent a lot of time there when I was working at WNEP from 2017 through 2021, and then I got a great job and a dream job here at Chat Sports. Ryder saying fly, Eagles, fly. Ketrick saying fly, Eagles, fly. Robert Wallace, he's tuned into the show from Allentown, Pennsylvania. All right, we have 124 people watching. More people will pile in as they get that notification and they see us on that YouTube feed. But help us out. Let's attract some more viewers. How do you do that? It's very simple. You tickle that thumbs up icon and you like the video. Kelly Knock with the $5 super chat. That gets us started with supers. Good stuff right there. Lori Papas working from home, but always want to keep up with the Eagles. That's what we do. Shout out to the Twitter account, by the way, Inside the Eagles, for retweeting my X post saying that we are going live. If you saw that, and that's what caused you to tune into the show, I want you to type me because we'll start to give you some shout-outs there on that end as well. Kelly Knock with that 5-piece. Appreciate that. Again, if you send in a super chat with a question, a hot take, some analysis, that will be included in our mailbag, which will be segment number 4. Tommy Curzio, he's always saying, go Eagles, go in the chat. He also wants the birds to eat. We'll all be eating tomorrow. Gene Holcomb, need to win the Super Bowl for Brandon Graham and the ones who retired this year. Do it for Jason Kelsey. Do it for Brandon Graham. Do it for all Eagles fans. I will never forget February of 2018 being by the Art Museum for the Eagles Super Bowl parade. It was incredible. incredible. The sights and sounds, the feeling of jubilation. I need to experience that again. And if the Eagles do win the Super Bowl, we're taking some cameras on the road. Myself and Chip, we will be out and about the city of Philadelphia, and we'll be documenting that parade for sure. All right, continue to hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. 133 people watching. We usually go live a little bit later on a Wednesday. Chip has to board a flight, so we have 4 segments coming up. Now let's talk some Eagles right now. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. Let's get it. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. And no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, I greatly appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. And coming up, what a matchup we have. Week 13 coming up on Sunday at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. Philadelphia Eagles traveling to take on the Baltimore Ravens in one of the top matchups of this NFL season. It's going down in Baltimore, and it'll be going down right here on Eagles Now for our watch party. More on that coming up here in just a moment. You take a look at the matchup and the odds. I think the odds makers are expecting a lot of points potentially to be scored in this ball game between these two high-octane, explosive offenses. Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, this great offensive line going up against Lamar Jackson. Maybe the best semblance of weapons that he's had around him in his career. And what a year Derrick Henry is having on the other side of 30. When running backs usually get old and they slow down, Henry's having a phenomenal season. The Ravens, 3-point favorites in this game. I have some thoughts on that line and this game coming up the first day of December. Can't believe the 12th month of the year is already here. Kickoff is set for 4:25 p.m. Eastern and 1:25 p.m. out there on the West Coast. Speaking of this game, I alluded to it just moments ago. Myself, producer Chip, we will be live for an Eagles-Ravens watch party on Sunday right here on Eagles Now. Our pregame show gets started an hour and 5 minutes before kickoff, so we will get things underway at 3:20 p.m. Eastern. It's the best place to experience an Eagles game day outside of being at the actual game, so we hope to see you there. And I just want to start off with this. This is a matchup that you dream of. This is a matchup that gets you really excited. And I'm excited about this partially because Philadelphia and Baltimore don't play all that much, but when the Phillies play at Camden Yards against the Orioles, it's always a great atmosphere because this is a regional matchup that we don't get to see enough, in my opinion. And so when the Eagles play the Ravens, it makes for a great atmosphere because you have Philadelphia and Baltimore, two cities that are very close geographically, whose teams don't often go up against one another, and this year it happens to be a great game and a great matchup and a potential Super Bowl 59 preview. And I do think that the Eagles are being disrespected a little bit with this betting line. Now, in the city of Philadelphia, we like being underdogs. The Birds here at +3. So they're getting 3 points on the road against Baltimore and the over-under at 51.5. So I do expect a lot of points to be scored. But why I think the Eagles could be disrespected by this line, outside of the Detroit Lions, they're the hottest team in football. The Birds have won 7 games in a row, and during this winning streak, it's not like they've been edging by opponents. They've been kicking ass and taking names. They've had the #1 overall defense during this stretch, the #1 rushing offense, compiling nearly 200 yards of rushing yards every single game. This Ravens secondary has really struggled, so Jalen Hurts could have a monster ball game in this one, and the Eagles have the rest advantage. Now, both teams played at SoFi Stadium this week, but it was the Eagles against the Rams outside of L.A. on Sunday night, but then the Ravens played the Chargers outside of L.A. on Monday night. So even though Baltimore is the home team here, the Eagles have a day rest advantage, and they don't even need to hop aboard a flight in order to go to Baltimore. I will say, Ravens are legit, so it's not surprising that they're favorites. Lamar Jackson, bona fide MVP candidate. He won MVP last year. He's playing better football this year. Derrick Henry has been the thunder to Lamar's lightning. And when the Ravens signed him this offseason, I loved the move. And I had predicted he's going to have 15, 20 touchdowns this year just because Baltimore knows how to utilize a player like that. Myself and Chip, with our prize pick selection, we took the more on Derrick Henry touchdowns, and he's already gone over that number. Lamar also has one of the best groupings of weapons around him that he's had in his career. It's helped to elevate his game. This Ravens team going into 2024 wasn't expected to have a very good offensive line, but their offensive line has outperformed their expectations, even though they do have two players who have been penalized some of the most among offensive linemen in the National Football League. This defense against the run is really good. As a whole and against the pass, though, they've been surprisingly down. And throughout this preview, we'll talk about how Philadelphia can exploit that Baltimore defense. Going back to Lamar Jackson, what a year Lamar Jackson is having. He was the NFL MVP last year with somewhat pedestrian numbers. It wasn't a great year for quarterbacks last year to win the MVP award. It's kind of the case this year, which is why Saquon Barkley has a realistic shot. This year, though, it's a different story. You take a gander at his numbers in 2023, he completed 67.2% of his passes, almost 3,700 yards, 8 yards per attempt, a QBR of 64.7, 29 total touchdowns to 7 interceptions. This year, the completion percentage is still really good. He's leading all quarterbacks in passing yards with more than 3,000, so he is set to overtake that number from a year ago. He's at 8.9 yards per attempt. He's number one among all quarterbacks in QBR, and he's already overtaken his total touchdown numbers from last year. 30 total touchdowns to 3 interceptions in 2024 for Lamar Jackson, and all 3 of his picks have come off deflections and tips. So even the interceptions that he's thrown, they've been well-thrown footballs. Saquon Barkley and King Henry. Let's spend a few moments talking about these two terrific players who are the 2 leaders to win NFL Offensive Player of the Year. The running back position has really changed the opinions of many. And in the past, I've talked about it as an expendable position, but you think about how important Christian McCaffrey was to the Niners last year, top 5 in MVP voting, more than 2,000 all-purpose yards. He was the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. And then this year, you look at the impact that Saquon has had on Philadelphia. He has changed this offense. Derrick Henry, he's done the same with the Baltimore Ravens. Look at what Josh Jacobs is doing with the Green Bay Packers. All of these players got paid. As for how King Henry and Saquon stack up against one another, they've really been neck and neck from the beginning of the season. Saquon has 2 more carries to lead all players in the NFL. He has more rushing yards, 1,392 to 1,325, so neck and neck there. Derrick Henry has 13 rushing touchdowns. Saquon has 10, but he's been brought down at around the 1-yard line, which then leads to the brotherly shove. So Saquon, realistically, on a team that doesn't run the brotherly shove with Jalen Hurts, could have 15, 20 touchdowns this year. No cap. Yards per carry, it's 6.2 for Saquon, 6 even for Derrick Henry, and then total rushing yards per game, 126.5 for Barkley, and then 110 for Henry. As for some notable Eagles injuries here, Devontae Smith was out last week against the Rams. A.J. Brown went off. He overtook the century mark with more than 100 receiving yards. Devontae Smith, as we're recording this on on Wednesday, in the lead up to this game, did not practice on Wednesday. Wasn't even in uniform. So that kind of tells me that Devontae Smith not going to be able to go in this one. He left that game a couple of weeks ago, severely limping off the field. It didn't look good, and you can't mess around with those soft tissue injuries. And then Philadelphia losing a marquee leader and player up front in Brandon Graham, who is having a terrific season against the Rams when he was dominating. He tore his triceps, and he is out for the year. On the Ravens sideline, Roquan Smith, it's like the year of the hamstring. So many hamstring issues all across professional sports. That's the injury that Roquan Smith is dealing with. He missed Monday Night Football's game against the Los Angeles Chargers, but he got close to playing. He was working out pregame, has an opportunity to play in this game for Baltimore, really does a great job of controlling the middle area of the field as the off-ball middle linebacker for Baltimore. He's a terrific player. Both Philadelphia and Baltimore sitting in a very good position as far as their respective playoff pictures in the NFC and the AFC going into Week 13. The Eagles are one game behind the Detroit Lions for that number 1 seed and the vaunted home field advantage. Outside of that, you have the Seahawks in that 3 position, Atlanta Falcons in that 4 spot, and some really solid wildcard teams, headlined by the Minnesota Vikings at 9-2, the Green Bay Packers at 8-3. They're wildcard teams because the Lions are leading the NFC North, and then you have the Washington Commanders there in that final wildcard spot at 7-5. They've been reeling a little bit over the last couple of weeks, coming down to pretty much the football team that a lot of people had anticipated they were going to be prior to the season. As for the AFC playoff picture, makes me sick to see the Kansas City Chiefs in that number 1 spot. Not far behind them, the Buffalo Bills. 9-2 is Buffalo. The Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the surprise teams in the NFL, 8-3, leading the AFC North. That's why the Baltimore Ravens are that first wild card team at 8-4. The Houston Texans in a bad division, that 4 seed at 7-5, and then the other 2 wild card teams on top of the Ravens, the Chargers at 7-4, and how about those Denver Broncos at 7-5? I think Sean Payton is the NFL Coach of the Year. We're only beginning to take flight for our Eagles-Ravens preview. Take flight, Eagles, Ravens. See what I did there? Any other YouTube host giving you creativity like that? I'm kidding. But let me know down in the comments section who you got in this game. I'm serious about that. Type PHI for the Birds. Type BAL for the Ravens. Let me know down in the comments section right now. Saquon Barkley having a magical season. It has been a joy, an honor, a pleasure to watch him. And with the holidays coming up, do you want to gift yourself a Saquon Barkley jersey? Do you want to get a number 26 jersey for somebody else, significant other, friend, family member? Well, we got you covered thanks to our friends at Fanatics. Plug in that link down below, chatsports.com/Saquon jersey. I'll put that link down below in the comment section attached to the pinned comment and in the show notes. If you also use that link and you want another Eagles jersey, for me, my next one might be Brandon Graham or Lane Johnson because they're franchise legends. I already have a Saquon Barkley jersey. Then you can still use that link and get some more Eagles jerseys. Again, chatsports.com/Saquon jersey. We move forward with our preview. 2 heavyweights clashing on Sunday in Baltimore. I just can't wait for this game to get started between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens. And coming up, what the Eagles have to do to beat Baltimore to win their 8th straight ball game. Key to the game number 1. It is going to be paramount for this Eagles defense to stop the Baltimore Ravens rushing attack. This Ravens identity under Lamar Jackson, it's been this way since he came to Baltimore out of Louisville. With the way that the Ravens offense is designed, with the way that they prefer to play, if the Ravens are able to jump out to an early lead, seize momentum of the game, they can dictate the pace, the flow, and the rhythm of the ball game. They get rolling with the run and they play from ahead, they are very difficult to stop because then that opens up the RPO for Lamar Jackson. It opens up the pass. This is a Ravens team that has a good semblance of weapons on the offensive side of the football. Zay Flowers is legit. Rashad Bateman's having a career year. Mark Andrews, one of the top tight ends in all of football. And the Ravens, when they play from ahead, they just have this different swagger and level of confidence about them. But when they have to come from behind and they become more of a passing team because they have to climb out of that deficit, that's when their identity changes a little bit. And so this Eagles defense, which has been the number 1 overall defense during this 7-game winning streak, has to stop the run. And the Ravens run it a lot, 51% of the time, 4th most among all teams in the NFL. They're averaging 5.8 yards per carry, led by Derrick Henry, who's rushing for 6 yards per tote. That's number 1 in the NFL. Their rushes per game, 31.3. That's 5th in the league. Rushing yards per game, 180.2. Number 2 in the NFL, behind Philadelphia. And their rushing touchdowns per game at 1.4. That is also top 5. And they're led, of course, by by Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. You take a look at how his numbers stack up with Saquon Barkley, two players who are in the running for NFL Offensive Player of the Year. For Henry to be on the other side of 30 and doing this looks phenomenal. 221 carries, second in the league in touches behind Saquon Barkley. More than 1,300 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns, 6 yards per carry, 110 yards. And of course, it goes without saying, given the load that he is and how difficult he is to bring down, the Eagles are going to have to tackle well in this game as well. And then Lamar Jackson, with him running it, these are just his rushing numbers. He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry, 103 carries this year, 599 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Key to the game number 2, Vic Fangio against the aforementioned Lamar Jackson. Last December, Vic Fangio, when he was the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, went up against Lamar. That defense for the Dolphins did not have the level of talent that the Eagles have, and they were very banged up. But Fangio was schooled by Lamar. Now, the Eagles have the number 1 overall defense during the 7-game winning streak. They've been so sound at all 3 levels. Great defensive line play, great play at that linebacker spot, led by Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, and they've been so good in that secondary, headlined by 2 rookies, and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. But last December, when Lamar went up against this Vic Fangio scheme, he carved him up. He was so efficient. 18 of 21 for 321 yards and 5 touchdowns. And here's what Fangio had to say about Lamar. Fair share of mobile quarterbacks that I've gone up against? Yes. Then there's Lamar Jackson. He's unlike anybody else. The only other player that's been like him in the last 50 years is Michael Vick. Wow, he's a tremendous player. Kudos to Ozzie Newsome and Eric DeCosta for picking him. 31 other teams that passed on him are kicking themselves. He's really improved over the years, dynamic with the ball, good passer. He makes their offense go. I mean, the pure definition of a great quarterback is there's no one way to play him, but if there was, everybody would do it. So you just have to mix up what you're doing, and along the way, they have a hell of a run game, both from the player's ability, offensive line, tight ends, runners, and the scheme of it with Lamar at the helm makes it a difficult task. There's a lot to prepare for and a lot to defend in this offense. So not only is Lamar Jackson very difficult to defend, he's also been insanely good against NFC teams. Throughout his career, Lamar sports a 23-1 career record against NFC opponents. Now, Nick Sirianni's team, since he took over in 2021, have been great on the road and excellent against AFC teams. So what will give in this game? Lamar Jackson the last 2 years, he won MVP in 2023, and his numbers were okay, not great by any means. This year, though, he leads the NFL in passing yards. He leads the NFL in QBR. He leads all quarterbacks in a lot of different metrics, and he's combined for 30 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. Key to the game number 3, Philadelphia, and the backbone of this offense and the backbone of this 7-game winning streak on the offensive side of the football is them being a rushing football team. But Baltimore has a great rushing defense. So Philadelphia has to find success with their ground game. They've been able to do it since coming out of the bye, led by Saquon Barkley, who has already set a career best for rushing yards going into Week 13. It's been insane. Rush play percentage. The Eagles run the ball more than any team in the league. 56% atop all 32 teams. Their yards per rush, despite the attempts being so high, number 2, 5.2. This Eagles offensive line is stupendous. Rushes per game. Philadelphia, of course, number 1 at 37.2. I like how Kellen Moore has been mixing the offense, running it and throwing it. It's helped out Jalen Hurts a lot. The Eagles, rushing yards per game, 193.4. That's like 13 more than Baltimore, who's in that number 2 spot, and then rushing touchdowns per game. This is thanks to Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, and then against the Rams, Kenneth Gainwell getting in on the action, 2 rushing touchdowns per game. That's also number 1 among all teams in the NFL. But look at how this Ravens defense, under first-year defensive coordinator Zach Orr, has fared against the run. Teams are running it 34.5% of the time against this Ravens defense. That's number 2 most in the NFL. The Ravens are only giving up 3.5 yards per rush. Rushes per game, 22.5. That's number 3. Rushing yards per game, 77.9. That's number 2. And they're only giving up 0.8 on average rushing touchdowns per game. That's 8th in the NFL. These numbers are very impressive. But a couple of things. Baltimore has not taken on a rushing team like the Eagles this year. And number 2, a lot of teams are deciding to throw it a lot against Baltimore because their secondary has been so porous. And we're going to talk about that coming up here in just a moment. So in the trenches, a really good matchup awaits on Sunday. Eagles, one of the top offensive lines in the game, from left to right. Jordan Mailata at left tackle, Landon Dickerson at left guard. Cam Jurgens has been great replacing Jason Kelce. Mekhi Becton, what a signing he's been on a cheap one-year deal. I'd love to see the Eagles bring him back. I think he found his position for the future. He even tweeted out, "I'm having fun playing football again. I love this team." Mekhi, that's what happens when you go from the Jets to the Eagles. Worst organization to one of the best, if not one of the most well-run organizations in the game. And then Lane Johnson still playing at an insane level. The Ravens do run a 3-4 defense, so you'll see a couple of different alignments along that front with Kyle Van Noy kind of coming in there as an edge rusher and Odafe Owe. Matabuke's a really good player, but it's going to be a good matchup up front in the trenches between this Eagles offensive line and that front for Baltimore. Key to the game number 4, Jalen Hurts might need to air it out, and the Eagles might have to win this game over a Super Bowl contending team on the arm of Jalen Hurts instead of on the legs of Saquon Barkley. Look at how this Ravens pass defense has played this year. Teams are throwing it the most against Baltimore, the second most against Baltimore, 31st in the league. 65% of the time, teams are calling a pass play against this Ravens defense. The opposition's completion percentage, 64.8%. That's 15th. Yards per pass, 7.6. That's 24th. And then passes per game, dead last at 39.2. Jalen Hurts during this winning streak, he's handed it off to Saquon a lot. He's had a lot of success on the ground. It's not like he hasn't had any success through the air. He has. He's been very efficient, very smart, very decisive, completing passes sideline to sideline at all 3 levels. He continues to be one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL. And during this 7-game winning streak, he has 19 combined touchdowns to just 2 giveaways. Now, A.J. Brown will be featured a lot. If Devontae Smith can't play in this game because of that hamstring injury, it's not looking good on that front. As I record this show on Wednesday, that'll hurt this Eagles passing game, but they're still plenty talented enough. Key to the game number 5. Philadelphia offensively has to win on 3rd downs. And if they're able to win on 3rd downs and move the chains, dominate time of possession, you keep Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry off the field. But then you take the Ravens, which are a rhythmic offensive unit, out of their rhythm. And then defensively, you win on 3rd downs against Lamar, and you get them on that sideline. Here's how Philadelphia stacks up offensively and defensively. They're up to number 7 in points per game, just a tick under 27. They're 3rd in yards per game at 389.3. They are 8th in yards per play at 5.9. 43% of the time, they're moving the chains on 3rd downs. That's 7th in the NFL. They could be better in the red zone. That's a little bit of a blemish for Philadelphia. That's going to be very important as you look ahead to the playoffs when points matter, possessions matter greatly. 55.8% there. Defensively, Philadelphia giving up 18.1 points per ball game. Number 6 in the NFL. During the 7-game winning streak, they've been number 1. Yards per game, they are 1st in the NFL. 274.6. I can't wait to see how this young Eagles defense fares against this veteran-laden Ravens offense. Number 2 in yards per play at 4.7. Number 3 on 3rd downs, and they're 5th in red zone touchdown percentage. So when teams get inside the 20, Philadelphia doing a very good job of keeping them out of the end zone. How the Ravens stack up. 2nd in points per game offensively, 1st in yards, 1st in yards per play, 3rd on 3rd downs, number one red zone offense in the NFL at 78.7%. Another reason why I'm so stoked for this football game, because this is a good litmus test to see how Philadelphia fares against a Super Bowl contender. But defensively for Baltimore, usually this is the backbone, the strength of this team. You think about all the great players they've had over the years, from Ray Lewis to Terrell Suggs and more. The list goes on and on and on. But this year, 23rd in points per game, 24th in yards per game, 19th in yards per play, 25th on third downs, and 15th in the red zone. So with that, I want you to predict the score between the Eagles and the Ravens. I think Philadelphia is being disrespected by the odds makers as 3-point underdogs. I think a lot of Eagles fans are going to make the trip to Baltimore, and I'm going with the Eagles to win this game in a thriller. It comes down to the wire. It comes down to the foot and the leg of Jake Elliott, and he connects against another really good kicker who has missed some kicks this year like Elliott has in Justin Tucker. 33-30 is my final score. A reminder, subscribe and join us for our Eagles-Ravens watch party. The show begins at 3:20 p.m. Eastern. We'll catch you then. $20 super chat from Lori Papas. Chase and Chip, you guys rock. Lori, you rock. And I hope you're having a great Thanksgiving Eve, and I hope everybody out there is having a great Thanksgiving Eve. All right, segment number 1 is down. Few more segments to get to. Dennis Designs, $10. Do you have the Eagles Now t-shirts too? Put Lamar on his back. Go Birds. Yes, got to put Lamar Jackson on his back. He's hard to get down, though. Very difficult to defend. We do not sell these Eagles Now shirts. If we end up doing that, Dennis, I will let you know. And again, once we get some hats made, you're going to be first on the list for me to send a hat to. Segment number 4 will be a mailbag. Get involved. Use the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. That's the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. 3 more segments left to get to, and segment number 2 is about to get started right now. Kane Angel, 35-32, close game. Chris Clark, 27-17. Dennis Designs said 36-21. Jalen has to pick it up. Joe Ellen Saraka, 33-30. Carroll, Saquon is going to go off. Eagles 43-28. 43 points would be something. All right, coming up next, going to take a gander at the Eagles playoff picture and what Philadelphia has to do to get the number 1 seed and home field advantage in the NFC. Start the show with me drinking water. All right, here we go. Hey there, welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr., and here's what we have cooked up for you today. We're going to take a look at the Eagles playoff picture and playoff path. What Philadelphia has to do to lock up the number 1 seed in the NFC so that home field advantage goes through Lincoln Financial Field in South Philadelphia come January, and hopefully Philadelphia will be representing the NFC in New Orleans in February for Super Bowl 59. I want to begin with this. This has been a very fun Eagles season. One of the more entertaining Eagles seasons in recent memory. So much talent, so many marquee performances, and it's coming off the heels of what was last year a very disappointing 2023 campaign in which the Eagles collapsed down the stretch and lost 6 of their final 7 games. So if you are having fun watching this version of the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. Naturally, let's take a look at the 2024 Eagles schedule and how they've fared so far. What a ride it's been through the first few months of the season. And this game against the Ravens on Sunday, going to be on the 1st of December. How is it already nearly the 12th month of the year? 2024 has really flown by, and hopefully 2025 gets started with some marquee Eagles playoff wins and a Super Bowl in February. The Eagles got the season started with an excellent win over the Green Bay Packers, 34-29, a game in which they overcame 3 turnovers and came back multiple times to beat one of the top teams in the NFC. The Packers are legit. Then week 2, the Saquon Barkley drop. Somehow the Eagles lost that game 22-21. If they won that, they'd be tied with the Detroit Lions for that number 1 seed in the NFC. The Eagles in a gotta-have-it spot. Ugly game against New Orleans in week 3 after New Orleans was going crazy offensively at the time. They were the #1 scoring offense in the league throughout the first 2 weeks, and Vic Fangio's defense really came to play, holding New Orleans to just 12 points. Jalen Carter was dominant in that game. You had the long Saquon Barkley touchdown, which really flipped the momentum and won the game for Philadelphia, and the Eagles were able to escape a couple of blunder decisions from head coach Nick Sirianni. Week 4, ugly loss against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 33-16, the final score there. Defense got carved up. They couldn't tackle. Eagles offense couldn't do anything without A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson. Eagles go into the bye week 5. They come out of the bye week 6. They beat the Cleveland Browns 20-16. An ugly game that should have been close, which came down to the wire, and there were a lot of people who, after the Eagles won that game, wanted Nick Sirianni to get fired. But we didn't know at the time that that would be the start of a 7-game Eagles winning streak. The following week, they blew out a team for the first time since the 2022 season. No joke. 28-3 over the New York Giants. The following week, they go on the road and they blast the Cincinnati Bengals in that second half. They pull away 37-17. Jalen Hurts was terrific in that game, throwing it and running it, combined for, I think, 4 touchdowns in that ball game. And then Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence come to town. The Eagles were up 22-0. They nearly lost that game. Nakobe Dean picks off Lawrence in the end zone to seal that one. Final score 28-23. And then the Eagles go on the road. They annihilate the Dallas Cowboys 34-6. What up, Jarrah? How about them Cowboys? And then the Eagles on Thursday. Short week. Washington Commanders, they were hot. Jaden Daniels, the talk of the league. Vic Fangio's defense shut them down. And Saquon Barkley ran wild in that second half. Philadelphia scored 20 points in 10 minutes. Saquon Barkley had 2 touchdowns in 20 seconds. Birds ran away with that one 26-18, and it looked a little bit closer than it actually was because the Commanders scored that garbage time touchdown. And then the Eagles have that mini bye, week and a half off. They go on the road, and they crush the Rams by 17, 37-20, and the Rams in that game scored another garbage time touchdown. So up to this point, the Eagles, 8-2, they've won 7 games in a row. What a year it's been for the Birds. And what a great matchup that awaits against the Baltimore Ravens, a true litmus test to see where the Eagles are. As for the NFC playoff picture, that plays a big role in the show that we're doing right now. I had just mentioned the Eagles are 8-2. Bad job, Chase. 9-2. I failed elementary algebra at Temple University. Sometimes I can't count. But Philadelphia, 9-2, 2 seed in the NFC, 1 game behind the Detroit Lions. That's the team that we're really going to focus in on during today's show because that's the team we need to falter for the Eagles to get home field advantage. I'm not worried about the Seahawks. I'm not worried about the Atlanta Falcons. If you look right now at what the first round would be, if things were to stay as they are right now, Philadelphia would be hosting Washington in the wild card round of the playoffs. Those other wild card teams, a little bit dangerous. Minnesota has a great defense, but can Sam Darnold come to the link and win? I'm not sure about that. Green Bay Packers, 4 wide at wide receiver, 2 really good tight ends, and improved defense. Good coach in Matt LaFleur. They have some playoff experience, but Philadelphia beat them week 1, and that's when Philadelphia didn't know who they were as a football team, and they weren't playing their best ball. Other teams in the mix, Arizona at 6-5, Tampa Bay at 5-6, Rams, Niners also at 5-6, but I don't think the Rams and Niners are good enough to make it into the playoffs this year. The NFC East standings. Things are looking good for the Eagles to win this division once again, barring a 2023 type of collapse. And if that happens, I will be bent out of shape. I will be very sad, and Nick Sirianni could get canned. But the vibes of this team, a lot different than last year, and the remaining schedule a lot easier. Philadelphia 9-2, 2.5 games ahead of the Commanders at 7-5. The Cowboys upsetting the Commanders, doing the Eagles a favor last week at 4-7, and then the New York Giants 2-9. Tommy DeVito might not even play on Thanksgiving. They're only playing him because they didn't want to pay Daniel Jones, who's not even on the team. And so Drew Lock might get the start for New York against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. So the question that I started with and posed to begin the show, what do the Eagles need to do to get the number 1 seed. They have to take care of business first and foremost, and they're going to need some help. You look at the Eagles' remaining schedule here. Difficult game on the road against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Birds are 3-point underdogs. We have a preview up on the channel. Be sure to check that out if you haven't already done so. It's the best Eagles-Ravens preview on YouTube. Week 14, easy game at home against the Carolina Panthers. Inexcusable if you lose that ball game. Then Philadelphia stays home to host the Pittsburgh Steelers. Keystone State rivalry, interstate rivalry. The Steelers are legit. Their defense might be the best defense outside of Philadelphia in the NFL. They're very well coached. They're very good at all 3 levels. The offense is pretty solid. Russell Wilson is definitely past his prime, so if you can shut down the run and force Russell Wilson to throw it, you like your chances against Pittsburgh, but that'll be a difficult game. Then you have the Commanders on the road. You already beat them convincingly, and Eagles fans always take over the joint. Week 17 against the Cowboys, and Week 18 against the New York Giants. So the theme here, Philadelphia is a pretty easy remaining schedule. They should only lose at most 1 or 2 games the rest of the way. And with them at 9-2 right now, they can easily get to 13, 14 wins. That's realistic. What's also of note, and I talked about this last week, after that trip to Los Angeles, the Eagles do not have to get on a flight again for the rest of the year. So they can continue to be a rested bunch. And so you think about the 2 teams who are on a collision course right now for that number 1 seed atop the NFC. Right now, it looks like the Eagles and the Lions. And when you watch both of these teams play, they're clicking on all cylinders. Momentum is in their direction. They're both very talented. They look like the 2 top teams in the NFL. And so coming up next, we're going to take a look at the Lions' schedule, which is pretty difficult and could open up a pathway for Philadelphia to maybe host the NFC Championship game at the Link in January. Today's Eagles Now, sponsored by our friends at DraftKings. We want DraftKings to be a sponsor here under the Chat Sports umbrella for a very long time. You can help make that happen by using the promo code SixersChat. And when you do that, after you download the app and create an account, bet $5 using that code, but then you get $200 instantly in bonus bets. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in the single elimination in-season tourney, culminating in the NBA Cup Championship in Vegas. First time here, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code SixersChat. That's code SixersChat for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/bball. And we take a look at some odds thanks to our friends at DraftKings. The Ravens, 3-point favorites in this game. The over-under at 51 even. Saquon Barkley, anytime touchdown scorer at -170. I kind of like the Eagles getting 3 points as 3-point underdogs. Odds and lines are subject to change. As for the Detroit Lions and their remaining schedule, we're going to go through that and why it's important for Philadelphia to get home field advantage, because the indoor-outdoor splits for Jared Goff are very, very fascinating. This Lions remaining schedule, it's not easy. Now, they will host the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving. So by the time this show comes out, you're probably watching this on Thanksgiving. The Bears are a competitive team. Their offense, since firing their offensive coordinator and going with Thomas Brown as their OC and play caller, has been a lot better. the Bears are a poorly coached team on the road against the Lions on a short week. So I don't think the Bears win that game, but it could be close, and the Bears have been much more competitive. But the following week, the Lions will host the Green Bay Packers. That is a massive, massive game in the NFC North. It could decide the division. The Lions do look out here, even though they're taking on some feisty to quality opponents, because these 3 straight games are all at home. Bears at Lions, Packers at Lions, Bills at Lions. But is it crazy to think that the Lions could lose to Green Bay and Buffalo, and then Philadelphia takes care of business, and just like that, in the snap of a finger, within the span of a couple of weeks, it's Philadelphia in that number 1 spot in the NFC? And then the last 3 games on this Lions schedule, Lions go on the road to Chicago. It's going to be very cold. Jared Goff doesn't play well in the cold. Lions at Niners. I think the Niners are cooked, so this game doesn't have the significance, in my opinion, that it had when the schedule came out, a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. Lions are going to be hungry to win that one, but the Niners could be battling for a playoff spot, looking to save their season. That might be a gotta-have-it game for San Francisco. And then it's Vikings at Lions to round out the season. And so you think about where the Lions are. Their lead atop the NFC North is very skinny. Their lead atop the NFC in general is thin. They have a couple of big divisional games coming up and to round out the schedule. 2 against the Bears, 1 against the Packers, 1 against the Vikings. And so it is not crazy to think about the Lions with this difficult remaining schedule to drop some of these games, the Eagles taking care of business to get home field advantage. And why I think home field advantage partially is so important, the last 3 times the Eagles have made it to the Super Bowl, 2004, 2017, 2022, they've been at home in the NFC Championship game. It is a difficult place to play given the environment, the noise, how loud it is, how raucous the fan base is, but also the weather that time of the year. And Philadelphia's fared very well at home in some of these big matchups. But how about this? I'm always so interested at Jared Goff's indoor-outdoor splits. Last year, a sizable difference between the games he played indoors and outdoors. Where the Lions play Ford Field, those are games that are indoors. And so he gets 8 or 9 of those per season. So obviously the numbers are going to be a little bit skewed as far as volume. But look at his indoor numbers. He's completing 74.8% of his passes indoors. Outdoors, he's only played 2 games outdoors, against Green Bay and against Houston, 63.5%. That is 11 points in difference in completion percentage. Yards per completion goes down a whole 2 yards from when Goff is indoors as compared to outdoors, 9.4 to 7.4. Touchdown to interception ratio, 17-4 indoors, 3-5 outdoors. And look at the difference in that passer rating. Almost doubles. Indoors, 119.1. Outdoors, 65.5. I am salivating at the thought of Jared Goff at Lincoln Financial Field in January. Eagles are going to need to do a great job for the remaining schedule. They're going to need some help from the Detroit Lions. But again, the theme of today's show, there is a pathway for this Eagles playoff path and picture to get that number 1 seed and home field advantage. So we round out with this. Who gets the number 1 seed in this conference? DET for Detroit, PHI for Philadelphia, O for other. Let me know. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Another super chat coming in. This one from Brian Weaver, $2. He's rocking the Saquon Barkley jersey, I think. Number 26. Brian looking good. Thanks for supporting the program. We're up to $37 in super chats. Can we get to 100? Segment number 4 will be a mailbag. Get your questions in. If we don't get enough questions, we just won't do a mailbag. It's a bonus segment for you, but it's also up to you. Segment number 3 is coming up next. How the Eagles got great news from the Dallas Cowboys this week. And could Philadelphia target another edge rusher after the Brandon Graham injury?
Jerry. How about them Cowboys? Gotta love it.
How about them Cowboys? It's Chase Sr., Jake Chipper, and the Burr Gang hanging out on this Thanksgiving Eve. What is your favorite Thanksgiving side dish, by the way?
Well, this can get controversial.
Let me know in the comments section. Honestly, I don't even know what my favorite is. I like it all. I am the least picky eater ever. I will try anything outside of something being absolutely vulgar. But I love cranberry sauce. I love mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
I love a thick gravy on the turkey.
Yeah.
I love green bean casserole. I love sweet potato casserole. All that's great. Stuffing's good from Ernesto.
That might be my pick. It's either stuffing or mac and cheese. One
mac
of the
and cheese,
two.
another
The
good
mac
one.
and cheese, to me, it's like you have that all the time. Like obviously it is a Thanksgiving side, but like, you know, you can have mac and cheese whenever. Not always the exact type of mac and cheese you have at Thanksgiving, but stuffing to me, like that's a Thanksgiving thing, and I love stuffing.
Kelly Knox said stuffing. Dennis Design said mashed potatoes. You know what I think is underrated? The gobbler sandwich. Now, Wawa has this time of year, but what it is, you get the Thanksgiving leftovers, you get a long Amoroso roll or any type of roll, not 2 pieces of bread. It's got to be a roll, and you put the turkey, stuffing, gravy, and cranberry sauce into a sandwich. It's phenomenal, and I hope that I'm able to have one here over the next couple of days. The gobbler bowl is delicious, Kelly said. Yeah, like if you don't want the carbs, you don't want the bread, or you're gluten intolerant, then yeah, you go with the gobbler bowl, even though I think stuffing might have some breading in it. Anyway, segment number 3 is coming up right now. Last call for your mailbag questions. If we get enough, we'll do a mailbag next segment. Coming up on this edition of Philadelphia Eagles Now, thank you so much for rocking with us. The Cowboys gave the Eagles great news this week. Thank you, as always, Jerry Jones. And on the back half of the show, the Eagles brought in 2 edge rushers after the Brandon Graham injury. One to the practice squad, one to the active roster. But could Howie Roseman make another move to bring in another edge rusher? Because there's a name that's floating out there who a lot of you know about. Before we begin, be sure to hit that subscribe button here on Eagles Now for Eagles coverage every single day year-round. Anytime I'm in front of this camera, on this microphone, I want to give you Eagles shows that are informative, insightful, thought-provoking, interesting, where you have a voice. So hit that sub button. And since we're talking about the Cowboys today, we are approaching 100,000 subscribers. Once we get there, we're getting that silver plaque from YouTube. Let's catch up to the Cowboys report. They've been in existence longer than us. 202,000+ subscribers, led by the fearless Tom Downey. Hit that sub button right now and lock us in. So this week on the radio, Jerry Jones was asked about his head coach Mike McCarthy, who's on an expiring contract, and whether or not he could earn his way to a new contract and be the head coach in 2025 and beyond after the Cowboys upset the Washington Commanders on the road. And Jerry Jones said, quote, "It's not that crazy. It could happen." Here's what Jerry said. "I don't think that's crazy at all. That's not crazy. Listen, Mike McCarthy is an outstanding coach. He's been there. He's done that. He's got great ideas. So the bottom line is, in no place in my body language or anything else have you seen an indication about what we're going to be doing relative to this staff at the end of the year. And we shouldn't. We've got a lot of football left." Number one, Jerry Jones thinks that this team can still make the playoffs. Jerry, I hope to tell you it's over. Number two, if he brings back Mike McCarthy, how hilarious would that be? You have a pool of some really good coaching candidates who could be available to you this upcoming offseason. Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Mike Vrabel is a really good coach. Bill Belichick could be available. If Jerry Jones wants to go with the splash move like he did with Jimmy Johnson and poach away a college coach, he did that with Jimmy from Miami. He could go Deion Sanders and take him away and pluck him away from Boulder, Colorado. A lot of different avenues in which Jerry could go, and those avenues, I think, are better than Mike McCarthy. And Jerry Jones, for the reasons that we're talking about here, never ceases to amaze me. He really thought that this roster was good enough to win a Super Bowl this year. They really didn't make any changes or moves in NFL free agency. They didn't get better at all. And Jerry thought, oh, yeah, we can compete for a Super Bowl after they got embarrassed in the playoffs last year by Green Bay at home. But this offseason, they lost their defensive coordinator. Dan Quinn left, took the Commander's job. They brought in Ezekiel Elliott, who is cooked, not even in the running back rotation. They benched him a few weeks ago, and they have no running back. Rico Dowdle is their number one. They have no wide receiver 2, no wide receiver 3, and they lost critical pieces to their offensive line and their 2 biggest free agent acquisitions, Eric Kendricks and Ezekiel Elliott. And Jerry thought that they could contend. And then he really paid Dak Prescott $60 million per year on the largest contract in the history of the National Football League for any player and any quarterback. I would have had Dak play on the final year of his deal and see if he could lift this team to shoot an NFC Championship game for the first time in 30 years. And that Dak deal has not even kicked in. And he's out for the rest of the year because he tore the hamstring off his bone. And now Dak's becoming a little bit injury prone. And as they've paid him, they become too Dak reliant. And as they've been Dak reliant, with him throwing the football way too much, they've ignored the running game, and they've become worse as an offense over the last couple of years. Jerry also thought that bringing Mike McCarthy back as a lame duck head coach, given that embarrassing playoff loss last year, on the final year of his contract, wouldn't be an issue. It is never a good idea to bring a coach back who's a lame duck head coach, because that just causes drama, speculation about what your coaching moves are going to be beyond the final year of that contract, especially if the team starts losing ball games in an ugly fashion, and that's what's happened with the Cowboys here in 2024. And now that Dallas goes on the road and they upset a Commanders team, which has been struggling over the last few weeks, Jerry's thinking about Mike McCarthy coming back, and McCarthy with that win may have saved his job. For all Eagles fans out there, we should all be getting a prayer circle together, and we should all be hoping during this holiday season that Jerry and the Cowboys bring Mike McCarthy back, because that would be an advantage to the Philadelphia Eagles. His offense does nothing special. He is a terrible game management coach. He hasn't won a big-time playoff game in a very long time. Did he win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers? Yes, he did. All the way back in, what was that, 2010? It's a decade and a half ago. And so I hope that Jerry does bring Mike McCarthy back, because that means that the Eagles can continue to have success in this division. If you hate the Cowboys, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video and type F Dallas down in the chat. As for Saquon Barkley, he's having a great year. You can get your Saquon Barkley jerseys. Segment number 2, or topic number 2 on this show, will the Eagles sign another pass rusher? That's coming up just around the corner. As for those Saquon jerseys, get them right now. Chatsports.com/Saquon jersey. I suggest you plug in that link right now, because with the holiday season quickly approaching, there are some great deals on Eagles jerseys thanks to our friends at Fanatics. So we'll put that link down below in the show notes, and I'll attach it to the pinned comment of today's Philadelphia Eagles. Now, all right, so this week, after the torn triceps for Brandon Graham on Sunday Night Football, the Eagles put him on season-ending IR. He's out for the year. They signed Charles Harris. They added KJ Henry to the practice squad. 2 pass rushers that Philadelphia's added to this team. Could they also add Shaq Barrett, who announced on Tuesday he's coming out of retirement? More on Charles Harris. 2017 first-round pick out of Mizzou by the Miami Dolphins. Good size at 6'3", 250. He has 19.5 sacks in 99 games, 31 of those starts, so a lot of experience at the NFL level. His last 4 years as far as sack totals, 7.5, really solid, followed by 1, 1.5, and 3. If he were on this Eagles team right now, he would be second in pressures now that Brandon Graham is out. So he's had a pretty productive season. The Eagles claiming him off waivers from the Carolina Panthers, and he could be active on Sunday against Baltimore and get some time. As for KJ Henry, he was a 5th-round pick by the Commanders in 2023. Older rookie last year, and an older player for how young he is. He'll be 26 years old in January. Had 1.5 sacks as a rookie. And this year, 1 sack combined with Cincinnati and Dallas. So the Commanders, with this new regime, they let him go. They didn't retain him, although he did have a pretty good training camp. And he, too, has some pretty good size at 6'4", 255. Which brings us to Shaquille Barrett. He announced this week that he's coming out of retirement. The Dolphins currently own his contractual rights. So if he wants to sign with another team, he'll have to get the Dolphins' permission in order to leave Miami and sign with another team, and the Dolphins will have to let him go from that contract. Heartbreaking news several months ago when he had to deal with the drowning death of his young daughter. So that probably played a role in his retirement. He seems to be happier and doing better now personally, but obviously that's a tragedy. And a well-known player who a lot of people are familiar with, he had 19.5 sacks with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2019, 59 sacks in 131 total games. He got his start in Denver, 5.5 sacks year 1, followed by 1.5, 4, and 3. The Broncos don't bring him back. He goes to Tampa Bay. First year with the Buccaneers, 19.5 sacks when Todd Bowles was the defensive coordinator. Just missed out on Vic Fangio. Did Shaq Barrett with Denver. And then had 8 sacks after that great year, 10 sacks in 2021, 3 sacks in 2022, and in 2023, 4.5 sacks. Solid player, and there's been some chatter that with him coming out of retirement, maybe the Eagles are showing some interest and he wants to link up with Vic Fangio to replace Brandon Graham. As for BG, huge loss for the Eagles. That can't be understated. He told reporters after the game against the Rams that he tore his triceps. He's out for the year. Nick Sirianni is hoping that he can still travel with the team and serve as a leader. He's a team captain, consummate pro, and just an absolute Philadelphia legend. Just like the Eagles are going to miss his play, they're going to miss his leadership, his expertise, and his experience. 15th year this year at age 36. He's third all-time in sacks in the history of the Eagles behind Reggie White and Trent Cole. 2 pretty good ones right there. And against the Rams, it sucks that he got hurt because at 36, he was having an awesome year and an awesome game against the Rams. 3 quarterback hits on Matthew Stafford, 2 TFLs, 1 pass breakup, and a sack. And BG had said prior to this year when he came back on a 1-year contract, this will be my 15th and final season. But then he tore his triceps, and even a few weeks ago, he did not rule out coming back for 2025. This year in 2024 was really good. Great depth piece for Philadelphia. Jalen Hunt, Nolan Smith, they're going to have to step up. And some of these additions might serve a role as well. Overall PFF grade, 78.6. Run defense grade of 80.1. Pass rush grade of 71.8. 3.5 sacks, 20 pressures on 169 pass rush snaps, 13 hurries, and 3 quarterback hits. So I leave you with this. Do the Eagles need to sign another edge rusher? Would you be interested in Shaq Barrett coming to Philadelphia? Let me know in the comments section. All right. How are we doing on questions? Do we have enough or not? If not, we'll just run through them and then we'll sign off. Dennis Designs with the $20 super chat. Kind of cutting it close on time too, so let's just run through some hashtag Eagles real quick. Yeah. We'll show Dennis' super chat. $20. Do you think Jalen is working with Jahan Dotson and Johnny Wilson to get them up to speed, or does he just ignore putting in the work in with them? I would love to see that happen, and if he is a pro, he would be doing it. Of course. I mean, he was working with Johnny Wilson this offseason before training camp. Like, they were putting in work away from the facility during their off time. And, of course, Jalen Hurts is working with Jahan Dotson. But, look, Dennis, think about this, right? Last year, the Eagles didn't use a wide receiver 3. Olamide Zaccheaus, Julio Jones, Britton Covey, they weren't utilized. This is really a 2-receiver offense in a way. I thought that Johnny Wilson should have come down with that touchdown grab. He's 6'6". He jumped up to get that football right here. What are you doing, man? High point that football. You're 6'6", tallest wide receiver in the game. And so he plays a little bit small. He did that at Florida State. It's an issue, but obviously he's a rookie, but he has to be a little bit better. Philly Flyover. Any of the defensive ends added solid? Yeah, I mean, we talked about that during that last segment. Like Charles Harris, not a bad player. 7.5 sacks a couple of years ago. Cool Rains, my Aussie mate, g'day. Detroit banged up with injuries, so they could drop the game against the Bears. Short week, you never know. Historically, Detroit has struggled a little bit on these Thanksgiving games, although this is probably the best team that they've had for a Thanksgiving game in like 30 years. But yeah, Bears are playing better football, no doubt about it. And Chicago trying to save their season. Dennis Designs. Who in the secondary will tackle King Henry? It's going to have to be a collective effort. Everybody's going to have to tackle. Everybody's going to have to fly to the ball. You can't show any fear going up against King Henry. If you do, he'll sense that like a shark smelling blood in open water, and then you're cooked. You also have to try to tackle Lamar Jackson. That's not an easy test either. So the Eagles can clinch the number 1 seed by winning against Baltimore. So does Detroit have to lose twice just to secure the first seed in the NFC? No. So there's plenty of time left. And the Eagles and Lions are too closely tied right now for them to clinch the number 1 seed. If the Eagles beat Baltimore and Detroit loses against the Bears, the Eagles don't clinch the number 1 seed. At that point, they will have the same record. Or actually, the Eagles would have one more win. So they would be up by a half game, I believe. Yeah, because isn't Detroit 10-1? So they've played 11 games. The Eagles have played 11. Okay, so then it would come down to conference record / record against similar opponents. And so pretty much you'd be a tie. But you're not going to clinch it with a win and a Detroit loss this week. Still plenty of time for that to be determined. All right, so we answered some of your questions. Chip and I going to dip on out of here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. An early show on this Thanksgiving Eve. Hope everybody out there has a great holiday. You take down some great food. You spend some quality time with your friends and family members. You watch some great football. Drive safely. Take a damn Uber. I'll pay for your Uber if you need it. Take an Uber, especially on a night like tonight. It's the biggest drinking night of the year. Chip's going back to Philly. I'm going to be around the Chat Sports studios. We'll both be here on Sunday. Eagles, Ravens. Can't wait for it. Until then, go Birds, and we'll see you.